Fermata, sosta, arresto e partenza.
Stop, pause, complete stop and departure. When driving a motor vehicle, you must have all the necessary documents for driving with you. Vehicle registration certificate, valid insurance certificate and driving license. Furthermore, we must be sure that our license category allows the driving of the vehicle and we must be sure of the perfect state of efficiency of the vehicle.
Operazioni da compiere prima di iniziare a guidare un veicolo, importanti anche per l'esame di guida.
Operations to be performed before starting to drive a vehicle. Also important for the driving test. Before starting to drive a vehicle, it is advisable to adjust the seat, the headrest, the internal and external rear-view mirrors to ensure good visibility, checking that rear and side visibility is not compromised. Due to the presence of passengers or the badly positioned load on motorcycles, the mirrors must be adjusted in relation to your height. Furthermore, before starting to drive a vehicle, it is necessary to identify the controls, levers, and buttons necessary for driving and to understand how they work. You must fasten your seatbelt and also check that passengers have properly fastened their seatbelts. Finally, we must make sure that the objects being transported are arranged in such a way as to prevent them from falling or scattering.
Differenza tra arresto e fermata.
Difference between complete stopping and stopping. The complete stop and the interruption of the vehicle's travel due to traffic requirements such as a red traffic light or a pedestrian crossing, while the stop of a vehicle and the temporary suspension of travel due to needs of very short duration, such as to allow people to get on or off. During the stop, the driver must behave in such a way as not to constitute a danger or hindrance to other road users. During the stop, the driver must not prevent the normal flow of traffic with his vehicle, adopting the appropriate precautions to avoid accidents, remaining present and ready to resume driving. Furthermore, it is not allowed to stop to ask traffic agents for information when this could cause traffic obstruction or slowdown. Outside built-up areas, the driver, in the event of a stop, must place the vehicle off the carriageway, but not on the cycle paths. Also, if it is not possible to park the vehicle off the carriageway, the driver must make the stop as close as possible to the right edge of the carriageway. However, where there is no raised sidewalk, the driver must leave a space of not less than 1 meter for the transit of pedestrians.
Sosta.
The pause and the suspension of the vehicle running over time, with the possibility of the driver to leave. During the pause, the driver, since he moves away from the vehicle, must take the appropriate precautions to avoid accidents, preventing the use of the vehicle without his consent. Furthermore, before getting off the vehicle when paused, the driver must make sure that the engine has been switched off and the handbrake has been activated. Parking regardless of the type of road you are on and its slope, ascent or descent when you are about to get out of the vehicle. Before opening the door from the side facing the middle of the road, especially if it is narrow. The driver must also make sure that other vehicles or cyclists do not arrive by means of the rear-view mirror, also reminding the passenger who opens the right door. Instead, before opening the vehicle door from the side facing the pavement, you must make sure that no pedestrians arrive. Unless otherwise indicated in the event of a pause, the driver must place the vehicle as close as possible to the right edge of the carriageway parallel to it and according to the direction of travel, even in the absence of special stripes. If you are in built-up areas, it is always forbidden to pause in a double row, except in the case of two-wheeled vehicles. Two-wheeled mopeds or two motorcycles. Attention in the quizzes: it is forbidden to stop in a double row, but the stop is allowed, for example, for the boarding and alighting of passengers in one-way urban streets. Pause is also allowed along the left edge of the carriageway, as long as there is sufficient space for at least one row of vehicles to transit and in any case not less than 3 meters wide. Furthermore, in the areas in which the parking spaces pause are delimited by horizontal signs, the driver must always place his vehicle within one of the appropriate spaces, without invading the contiguous ones in the manner prescribed by the parallel diagonal signs. During the pause, the driver must leave the vehicle with the engine off and take precautions to ensure the immobility of the vehicle regardless of the degree of slope of the road, such as, for example, pull the handbrake and engage the lowest gear. Typically, the first gear of the gearbox, leaving the vehicle with the wheels steered towards the curb.
Parcheggio in zona regolamentata con parchimetro o disco orario.
Parking in a regulated area with parking meter or disc. Timetable in an area where the pause is regulated with a parking meter. It is not necessary to use it if you stop only to pick up or drop off a passenger, but in the case of a parking pause we must use the parking meter and the arrival time must be clearly displayed, clearly indicating the time and also the minutes. We remind you that it is not allowed to update the timetable to extend the pause, but it is necessary to move the vehicle before the validity period of the pause expires. On the other hand, vehicles serving people with disabilities are not obliged to respect the time limit established for the pause. Another type of pause is the emergency pause. The emergency pause and the interruption of travel in the event that the vehicle has to stop due to physical discomfort of the driver or a passenger or due to a failure that renders the vehicle unusable.
Quando sono vietate la sosta e la fermata?
When pause and stop are prohibited in curves and outside built-up areas and on urban traffic roads. Also, their proximity in correspondence with vertical road signs or traffic lights, so as to obscure their view in correspondence with the horizontal preselection signs. Along the ducting lanes and in correspondence near the intersection areas. Furthermore, less than 5 meters from the corner of the intersection, the pause and the stop are always prohibited. On pedestrian crossings, on cycle paths, at their outlets and on pavements, unless otherwise indicated at or near level crossings, on the tracks of railway lines or tramways or so close to them as to hinder the movement of rail vehicles. In the galleries, in the underpasses and under the overpasses, under the archways and arcades. Unless otherwise indicated. Furthermore, outside built-up areas and on urban traffic roads, the pause and stop are prohibited near the bumps and also along the acceleration and deceleration lanes. Furthermore, the pause is forbidden at the exit of the driveways wherever it is prevented from accessing another vehicle regularly in pause in the second row, except in the case of two-wheeled vehicles in the spaces reserved for parking and at the stop of buses, trolley buses, and rail vehicles less than 15 meters from the stop sign for buses, trolley buses, and rail vehicles. If the parking spaces are not delimited, moreover, the stop is prohibited in the spaces reserved for the parking of vehicles in square service. Taxi. On the areas intended for the market and for vehicles for loading and unloading things at the times established on the quays, unless otherwise indicated in the spaces reserved for the stop or the pause of the vehicles. For disabled people at the slides or junctions between the pavements and the carriageway used by vehicles for disabled people. Furthermore, the pause is forbidden in the lanes or carriageways reserved for public transport. In urban pedestrian areas. In restricted traffic areas. For unauthorized vehicles. In front of municipal waste bins outside built-up areas 24 hours a day, the pause is prohibited limited to the hours of operation, at the petrol stations and in their proximity up to 5 meters before and after. In addition, in built-up areas, the driver must not leave a trailer detached from the tractor while it is paused, unless otherwise indicated. The pause prohibition can also be signaled with alternating yellow and black segments, placed along the vertical arrow of the sidewalk child.
Conseguenze dell'infrazione ai divieti di sosta.
Consequences of infringements of the pause prohibitions involve the subtraction of points from the driving license. The pause in the spaces reserved for parking and at the stop of buses and trolley buses, the pause of less than 15 meters from the bus stop sign. If the stop spaces are not delimited, the pause in the spaces reserved for the stop and the pause of vehicles for disabled people. The pause in correspondence with the slides or junctions between the sidewalks and the carriageway used by vehicles for disabled people. The pause in the lanes or carriageways reserved for public transport.